5 as well, so we'll allow that to settle. And now we're at 10 seconds in. Hello, hello, hello to everyone out there who may be watching, listening, or experiencing us in some other unique way. Good now, my name is Ryan Erickson with Red 42, contributing artist, here on behalf of the BetaCodex Network. And to my, here on the screen, we have Niels Flagging, also Red 42, and noted author, thought leader, and management exorcist.
You're so kind.
Oh, thank you so much. Niels, as we had a little bit of technical difficulties before on my part, as I am moving, have moved to a new location, am settling in. What I would like to hear a little bit about before we go into the theme today, which I think is I'm very interested in. What is happening with you at the moment, and where do you happen to be in your psyche self and Nielsishness?
That's a lovely word creation. I'm at our Studio Red 42 in Wiesbaden. So, but today we had a work session around Comenius. Some of our viewers, listeners might have heard of Comenius, our learning technology company that we created last year, ultimately in this incarnation, but the project goes back 5 years already, 6 years, I think. So, and only on Friday we launched a new product called Comenius Nano, which is fully. We put team development into teams' hands, without a need for facilitators, coaches, trainers, and so on. And that is, I think, a very innovative product. It's a whole suite of products, actually. So several nanos that we offer, 9 different solutions for teams in different situations with different problems. So that went live after 12 months or so of development. That product went live on Friday. For those interested, Comenius with a Q at the start, QOmenius.com. So that, and now we continue working on this, of course, to make it happen.
And of course, a great connection
with Comenius as well, Ryan. So
indeed, I am. And
you are a new US partner. So anybody wanting to use Comenius, you can try it through the shop, or for larger orders, Ryan, you are the perfect contact person, so to speak, and point of entry, touch point.
Well, yes, having been I have gone through the experience a few times. It is a wonderful new way of doing learning, and every session that I've been in has had really, really positive feedback. And wow, this is a way to learn differently. This idea and this idea of discourse didactics of what's happening with Comenius is how I came really deeply into the BetaCodex network and your work here. So these ideas of self-organized learning and self-organization in general are very deeply connected and are very much needed, I think, in the learning and development domain. I would.
In a way, I think I would say I don't think this. I know this for a fact. We stumbled upon the need for better learning methods, approaches, technologies through our transformation works, through our consulting. Where we at a certain point we figured, okay, how can we teach without teaching? How can we teach 10,000s of people almost at the same time, almost the same things, in a way that's fun and engaging and social and interconnected. And sometimes we like to say it's Montessori for adults, right? It's a different didactics or pedagogy, or andragogy, as sometimes called.
Andragogy. Oh my goodness!
It's a sophisticated term for pedagogy. Only that pedagogy means children, right? So some people, especially in the US, I think, like to say it's andragogy because it's for adults, but it's the same thing. Children and adults, we learn the same way, right? There is no specific way of learning for children. Children we just learn the same way, right? Yeah, very important topic, by the way, the whole learning thing, and this is of course we have feverishly worked on Comenius Nano for for a year, really. Now we launched it, and so now there's a whole. We are continuing to map the journey with Comenius that we want to go to, how we want to run this, and so we had a work meeting today, which was delightful, and what else? I'm back at working on the cell structure design book in English as well.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm here.
And you moved, which is brilliant.
Yes, and I moved to close to my ancestral home, and
yes,
this is where.
How far is it from your parents' home?
It's only 3 hours from the parents. My
3 hours.
3 hours. Yeah. no, by car at 60, 70 miles.
That is so American to say. Only 3 hours by car to your parents, really?
Yeah. Oh, I saw a video about this the other day. That there's someone in. I'm in Bournemouth. You're in London, and pardon.
I thought you were 3 blocks now from your parents.
Oh no, 3 hours. Well, I was 10. We were 10 hours before. We were 7 hours from my wife's family. So we are in the same city as my wife's family, and only a 3-hour car drive from the parents. Again, your American travel is much different than European travel.
Yes, 3 hours. My goodness. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So where could you get to? Where would a 3-hour travel take you from Wiesbaden?
Well, my father lives in another state, and he lives around 3 hours by car, a little more, but around 3.5, 4 hours. Yeah, so it's the same kind of distance. And I wouldn't say I'm living close to where my father lives, so close enough still. Close. No, we have a very good relationship, and I sometimes think it would be nicer if he lived a little bit closer. But then I didn't get that. Now you live in the same city as your wife's parents, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a calling at this point in our lives. You know, we're the same age. Our parents are fast approaching, you know, their 80s and beyond, and needing more support. And I think, and it is personally for us, it's been a very, I think, a blessing and a calling to come here and be in this place. And there's some challenges, of course, building a new network in a new place locally, but thankfully there's a global network of people who will follow, you know, me, and who I will follow wherever I go. So, and to close the Comenius topic, I think that is another, the topic for today of resistance and dissent. I think there are many different ways. I think the first thing that popped to me when I proposed that as a topic was around change, organizational change, and that the whole idea of resistance to change being, you know, a myth, really, if again, thinking about it in that way. And I hope that we talk about that a little bit. But there are many other definitions and valid articulations of resistance, and what is resisting, who is resisting, and when a human being resists, what are they resisting, which is great. A great topic. And the topic of education comes in. So we're talking about in organizational change, a lot of times that learning is deployed and implemented, and that there's a thought of, I'm resistant, that those who are proposing a learning program are saying, this is being rolled out to everybody, and if you're not on board, if you don't get buy-in, you're a resistor and you need to be dealt with. You know, resistance is futile, you know, and that is, as we've talked, and I've talked to you privately, is that idea is, it's, I wouldn't say paternalist, but it's this authoritarian view that if you resist, you must be crushed and molded into what we, the implementers of this change or learning program, have to say. So that's the myth of resistance.
By the way, one of the things that you said just made this, I'm not sure if we already talked about this at a certain point in a BetaCodex live session, but what you just said is interesting. You talked about change initiatives and learning initiatives. And I would say that usually, I think in change management, we expect the change to happen without learning, which is interesting. There is a disconnect, really. When we talk about changing stuff, reorganizing or whatever it is, yeah, we kind of fool ourselves that it will happen without the need for learning or insight. You know, we don't have to generate insight. It will just happen if we declare it, if we announce it, if we roll it out or kick it off in change, that you do not need insight and processing in change. And of course, one of our mutual friends, Daniel Mesick, I think he put this quite beautifully in his open space agility approach, and we put it like that and frame it like that in open space beta as well, that change must be a rite of passage, right? Ultimately, if it's not a rite of passage, a personal thing, then how can it hold? How can it stick? So the good change, the deep change, the profound change, it must be a rite of passage for everyone involved in the particular system that one would be talking about. So the learning is the core in a way, yeah, or personal development is the core of change initiatives and so on, which is very interesting already, right? And that already maybe explains why resistance to change doesn't really exist. It's resistance to lousy change method. I think we discussed this in other sessions, right?
We did, but I think in the interest of the reinforcement of a message, well, so the myth persists. Why is that such a myth? Because that people don't resist change, that amorphous thing, that, and this is maybe from Daniel's work, that people resist imposition that they don't understand, or that represents a threat to status or affiliation.
But is that resistance? If I threaten you and you resist, that's not resistance to change. It's resistance to violence. So
why are you doing exactly
change methods anyway? Yeah.
And this is where the distinction comes in between resistance and dissent. So if I don't agree or understand what is happening here in this proposed change, invited or imposed, if I don't understand, don't I, as a human being with dignity and authority of myself and respect, if you don't respect me enough to offer me the opportunity to dissent, to ask why, to question, to query, to say, well, this doesn't make sense to me. And the response to that can either be, I don't care if it makes sense to you or not. This is happening. So get off the bus or get on the bus. Or in an invitational approach, that's it. Well, yes, we invite your dissent to so this is the context. This is the reason. This is the why. And that also assumes that the learning hasn't happened before, that the learning is happening in that, oh, show me why, show me what's happening. And I know you are familiar with Peter Block's work. And one in the community book that I'm reading now as part of another project.
Brilliant book by Peter Block. Yes, Community. I'm not sure about the subtitle. Do you know the subtitle of the book?
Oh, I do. Well, actually, I might, because I have it up on my Kindle. Okay. I think it's belonging. Oh my gosh.
Yes, the structure of belonging.
Structure of belonging.
Look it up. The structure of belonging. Community. The structure of belonging. That's the title. Yes. One book by Peter Block. Very highly recommendable. Mm-hmm.
And that, again, whether or not you agree in the sequential nature of that process, but in the book, it's described dissent is before commitment. So how do you?
It's a necessary part of producing a commitment. That's beautifully framed, by the way. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So, and that's, and again,
there is no commitment without dissent preceding it, right? No earnest commitment. True commitment can only arises or emerges from the origin of dissent. Yes, which is beautiful, right? Beautiful insight. Very true and very intuitively true, I think. There's also this, I'm not sure where I got this. Maybe that's from Peter Kostenbaum and Peter Block's book as well, about freedom. but maybe
The new book?
I'm mixing this up. Yeah, the new book. But maybe I'm mixing this up. One of the constructivism teaches us that there is no single reality, but we all produce our own realities, right? Which doesn't mean that there is no truth, but truth is a subjective thing. In a way, there are as many different ways of looking at a problem or a situation as there are people. So we constructivism implicitly means that we construct our own reality in a way that implies for change work that we first have to socialize everything, really, where we are, what the problem is, what a solution or a vision might be, what the urgency is, and so on. All that needs to be socialized. So that requires this dissent to come together, to stick together, to construct a joint reality requires a social process, which, of course, open space beta and open space agility and even open space are all about, right? Yes. So that we construct, which is one of the marvels of the open space technology or open space meeting format, that in a way during an open space meeting we construct a joint reality, and we do not even know exactly, we don't even perceive exactly how that happens, but it happens, right?
The whole idea of dialogic change, and that the conversations create the relationships. And I think this may be another thing that we talked about, that what is an organization but this system, this network of conversations, and this network of relationships, that trust is built through conversation, a community is built through conversation, and we're talking about shared reality, and yes. And this is also maybe a position of dissent, that there are folks in certain communities who say, well, no, there is objective reality and there are facts, and we will seek, we will truth. These are the facts. This is the reality, and maybe that's an imposition. So there's
usually, yes. Of course, we shouldn't argue that there are no facts. Of course, there are facts, but reality is a different thing, right? Reality is something beyond facts. It's a whole image of a situation, and that includes some facts, but other things are subjective.
Beliefs. What do we believe? And I heard this in a conversation recently, of that one challenge that we face, we meaning the human organism, the species, our species on this planet, in civilization, face this polarization of individuals not even agreeing that something that happened. That there's that when I believe a certain set of facts to be facts, and I don't believe in the facts that you believe are facts, well, that creates an enormous possibility for conflict, and we see it here in America. I know a lot, and around the world with what has happened with pandemic response and whatnot.
Sure.
And so in organizations, it's a little better because we're contained within the sphere of activity, that there's a boundary, that these are the facts, that we get this much money in, we spend this much money, we allocate resources within this frame, these are the numbers, and this is the market. So that's a little bit easier to handle. But so there are facts. Yes, there are facts, and there are facts obviously outside the world. And this software failed. It failed because of this error.
It's one of the we should just clarify this. It's one of the misperceptions about constructivism, that supposedly it promotes the notion that there are no facts, which is untrue, right? So constructivism doesn't claim that there are no facts. It just says that we construct reality from the facts and the perceptions and the many, many things that influence us from within and outward and so on. So that we create our own realities. And it's very obvious that this happens, but that doesn't mean that there are no facts. Which is important to our question here about dissent, right? Dissent is required to create unity. That's very Mary Parker Follett, right? Unity, not uniformity. That should be our aim, says Mary Parker Follett, which is also beautiful, right? So unity also requires this social process, the rite of passage, the joint conversation or discourse, between actors.
And I think we've also there in our recent podcast with videocast with Jose Leal, I think also with his conversation that we engaged in on LinkedIn online.
That was a great example of different realities that we construct, right?
Well, and exactly, and there are others who want to convene folks. I think there's conversations happening now, and if entering into those conversations as a dissenting voice, right, and not to be perceived as I'm not this resistor who is evil. I am here to move forward in a spirit of progress. However, I disagree with your opinion, and I'm dissenting. My opinion is this and that. Then we have that density, and I think this idea of what is the distinction between unity and uniformity? And that I think is the uniformity being resistance is futile. You are going to adhere to this standard, and this is the standard. And if you do not adhere to that standard, you will be punished. We will enforce those standards upon you, as opposed to, and this is where I want to hear a little bit more depth. This is my learning about unity, meaning we are together in this. We are accountable to each other. We support each other. We may not always agree, and yet, I do acknowledge that there will be dissent. And even when there is unity, there is responsible dissent. Yeah. So, and I think
citizenship democracy depends on the same process, by the way, right? If you cannot have cultivated arguments, civilized arguments about things, which of course you mentioned the US, but where this is in some spheres has become very complicated. But of course, in other countries, we observe the same. Only if we have civilized arguments can we reach unity, right? And unity requires process. It is not constructed through uniformity. That's a different thing. It's very, very interesting distinctions. By the way, one of the other things that doesn't work in the context of what we are discussing is trying to convince others. That's a totally flawed strategy. I mean, I have so often in my youth tried to convince others, and of course that could never work. You never convince anybody, but of course you can invite others to reflect. You can even provoke others and irritate others into reflection and insight.
That's the in social media. Oftentimes we amplify that provocation, that irritation.
Everything seems a provocation on social media, right?
Speaking with the master of provocation, I think I am here.
Yes, but it's not. I sometimes explain that to others. What I try on social media is not to be an asshole or to tell the ultimate truth, which is what some people sometimes understand. But my way of, for example, sharing stuff on social media is I hope to instigate reflection and feeling and a process of reflection, ideally, if the person wants, because that's always an invitation. So I never make a statement on social media, and I make statements like this that are supposed to be, edgy, sufficiently edgy to provoke reflection and thoughtful disagreement, and then maybe insight. I think that's a very powerful thing, and of course, it doesn't really always work on social media. It almost never works on social media, one might say. Yeah, still, I try.
But it works occasionally, and I think, and this is why it worked with me, because in some of our conversations very early on, you came back at me that you're talking. This is bullshit, that you're talking about. That no, this is not what this is about, and it's very pointed, criticisms of what I was bringing to the table, that it wasn't fully formed, and that you got to have some opinion. So I could have said, no, I'm going to react to you, and I'm going to say, no, you're full of shit. No, I don't agree with you, and I know that happens. But what I chose to do was like, okay,
Yes.
let me assume that this guy knows what he's talking about. All right.
Yes.
And
Which leads us to another interesting.
Well, but that does. But again, when you take that in, okay, I'm going to think about this. So I'm gonna really think about what's this provocation, this irritation, and am I? I don't know that this is necessarily the resistance and dissent thing, but we talk about provocation, and then how you not react, but you respond to that. And from what stance you respond, I'm going to think. I'm going to explore. I'm going to do my own homework, and then come back to the conversation. And I came back. I could have just said, nope, goodbye, block. But you come back to a conversation that's interesting and provocative. So you were gonna bring something else into
I hope I never said, Ryan, you are full of shit, by the way. I hope I never
no,
did.
I don't.
But the this is bullshit thing, I occasionally do that on.
Well, that's the thing. People when you say this is bullshit, when you say this is bullshit, people take that personally.
Very personally.
And if they have built a model of sense making or what have you, that they have invested their career into, and a body of work, that when you say this idea, I don't agree, I dissent, I have a different view, that can come off as that I'm calling you an idiot or something like that, or you're full of shit. But no, it's a critique of the idea. No.
Which is very tough to separate, of course. But yeah, this I think, but this is, and this can be exercised, of course. And of course, in social media, this happens less well than in personal conversation. This having dissent, it's much better, to have dissent, or to produce dissent, and to work through dissent in a personal conversation. Even better than virtually. It works personally, of course, because there is more that we can work with in dissent. Yeah. But yeah, that's I think that's a very important point of making collective, let's say, change happen in social groups, in organizations. To not fall into the trap of tagging reactions as resistance, but to part from the assumption that there is a need for unity production, or for unity, or for union, let's say. So there's process work to do. Yeah. And many change processes or tools do not provide for this kind of serious conversation, for the quality of social density that is needed to produce unity, and to overcome the dissent. Because of that, ultimately, we do not want dissent all the time. The dissent is just needed to get to something. Especially in change. Change is always about the non-obvious, if it's meaningful, right? If it's obvious, we don't have to do it.
Why change? Right? What are you changing?
Exactly. So if it's non-obvious, of course, then there will be disagreement, naturally, If it matters, there must be dissent as a starting point. So, and to stir that up, I think that's a very interesting technique, and a very interesting, it's very key to change and transformation, to allow for the dissent. And of course, I find it very funny to say, no, what you're just saying is just crap. It's just a misunderstanding or flawed. It's a wrong question. I think that's very funny in certain situations.
Yes. I have to excuse me for
with respect, of course.
Yeah, for sure. If you'll excuse me for just a moment, I have someone at my door.
Which is interesting. Yeah, my co-host is dropping out of the session just for a moment, maybe to receive some mail or something. Yeah, but the process of change, I think that's, if I may continue for a moment in monologue, I think that's where change management is getting it all wrong. When we assume that change can be managed or steered or imposed or coerced into an organization, or that we can produce change with fear, with methods of fear instead of dialogue and conversation, then we are just getting it entirely wrong, and that there cannot be success. And I think that's behind this magic axiomatic number that John Cotter brought into the world, that 80% of change initiatives actually fail or produce less than ideal results. It's little wonder that change management doesn't work, because it ignores the social nature of the process. I did a little monologue while you were.
I heard the monologue. So this is the spark and the spice. Maybe
I finally said what I always wanted to say.
Yes, this is all this Ryan dude's all. Yeah, he's talking about the ideas that are crazy. No,
yes.
I did hear you mention Cotter in there, and again, having lived my whole organizational life in this bubble of deference to authority and doing support work, before coming into the desire to inspire change and catalyze change. I wasn't as familiar with Cotter's work, but I know you were, and I think there's something about you said 80. There's an 80% of number that you put in there. Is that around how much communication needs to come from authority, or in terms of what is the change on offer, or am I totally off on that?
This 80% number, it's just about. I think John Cotter did some research in the 1970s or 80s around this: how many change initiatives fail or produce less than optimal results, and he came up with this number, which is not very, very, as far as I know, it's not very empirically robust. This
not
number.
Validated.
I think it resonates with us when we say that most of the time change initiatives fail or do not produce the optimal result. I think that's intuitively right. Yeah. So we do not have to agree on the number. The number may not be highly empirical, and it's certainly not updated or something. And maybe it's irrelevant what exact number it is. What we know is that most change processes do not work. I did a lot of change.
Agile transformation.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say 100% of agile transformations do not produce.
Has there ever been one? That's a great. Has there ever been a successful?
And it's not, again, it's not because people are stupid. It's not because our claim here is not that change agents, consultants, nobody. The problem is not stupidity. The problem is that the social nature of change in social groups is grossly underestimated, and thus the tools, the processes are just completely flawed. I mean, if we assume for a moment that we all construct our own realities, right? Then what share of people should be involved from the front, from the start? When you do set change, what percentage of people within the relevant group should you involve?
100%.
Obvious, right? If we all produce our subjective realities, then of course we should, from the start, involve everyone. So we need social process that involves everyone. We do that through in open space beta. We do that through invitation from the start. There's a sponsor that's a needed. It's a necessity to start all this, but the sponsor then invites everybody. So the socialization starts. It's being kicked off by the sponsor at the beginning of the process, so that any concept that later rolls out or is based on rolling out, implementing, convincing, execution, etc., all these things cannot really work, because you ignore that the perceived realities, the different constructed realities,
it's disrespectful.
Need to meddle. They need to converge, and that is the true difficulty in change, profound change, significant transformation, right? No. So this, we don't have to agree, by the way.
Well, we don't have to agree, but this actually comes into the open patterns of open business agility that Daniel put out in Inviting Leadership, and around that there's two patterns. Again, we can call them patterns, principles. What there's a lot of argument about those two words, which is kind of ridiculous. Okay. But that whole group process, whether it's future search, open space technology, all these kinds of whole group process, we're talking about the whole system in the room. I think that was where that originally happened.
And by the way, maybe maybe in our next session, we will talk with the pioneer of whole group process.
Yes, we will. Paul Tuchinski. Yes.
And some whole group process. Yes.
Whole group process and common knowledge. That I think is an underestimated principle, is that that I know that you know that I know that this is what our environment is. This is the change that's happening. This is why the change is happening. These are the facts of our environment, and all of us know. And then you may not agree with this one. All of us know more than any one of us. I think that's kind of a truism, because again, if we all create our own reality, but that common knowledge and this is we talk about the organizational learning that is a precursor to the open space that happens in open space beta, particularly with the socialization of the principles and as well as relative targets and cell structure design that happen. That you're not going to the open space and saying, I'm going to have a session to tell you what cell structure design is all about.
Very good. Yes.
We're going to have an engagement that is going to lead to a whole group process that creates common knowledge, and that we accelerate and build on the common knowledge within that period of doing, that experimentation period.
Yes, so, which is often misunderstood. I think often people think that in an open space, people just walk in unprepared and have wonderful, illuminating conversations. But it's not like that, at least not in, if you do it seriously in open space beta, you do it seriously with an invitation and a theme and proper invitation, proper theme and so on. And really the open space meeting, which is why it only takes a day, it is only the culmination of a learning process that happens when the invitation is being sent out. There are 45 days between receiving the invitation and the open space. You need time to process, to learn, for people to prepare for the open space day. So people come highly prepared, highly anxious, some of them, of course, or many of them anxious to see the results done. So there's a lot of tension and social process that precedes the open space. In a way, an open space starts with the invitation already, and the meeting is just the culmination, or is topping it off, so to speak. Well, and open space 9 days later with another open space, of course, an open space data.
And again, there's some specifics about the open space data where you have the prep day after the open space, where you've kind of processing that and then moving into it. And open space technology, when it is most successful, and it always works when there are 4 things present: a real business issue, a burning issue that's happening. Why are we doing this anyways? A real big why, right?
Potentially a conflict.
Well, that's the thing. There's the big issue that has a high degree of complexity, a very high potential for conflict, a large number of diverse viewpoints, and a deadline of yesterday. Those 4 things, you put those together, you have that energy that says, okay, all right, we know what's going on. Maybe not everybody's going to buy into
that's the topic.
Buy in. So there's a trauma, there's a pain, there's a desire, passion to make something happen. And that's when you open space for dissent. That's when you open space for a lot of that stuff. And that's, I think, the difference between, there's a distinction between resistance and dissent. If you're going, the concept of resistance is, we are doing this. If you don't want to do this, you are out. You are resisting. You are persona non grata. But open space technology opens the space for dissent, and it is welcome. And because it's invitational, you don't have to go. You are not compelled. This is, again, I think this is the foundational beauty and elegance and possibility that comes from a transformation to beta principles through open space beta. I mean, it's the, I think you can sense the energy here. It's the power of it, and I think it is sorely needed, and to find the willing, and to find the individuals who really are sick of hierarchy and power games, and
which are an awful lot of people.
Yeah, and it's interesting in the conversations that I'm involved in, kind of seeking additional work, that once you dig under the surface of what people really hate about the environments that they work in, they hate not being included, invited, involved in whatever decisions are that are on offer. That is, it's disrespectful. It's a violation of human dignity, really. And in the workplace, I mean, it's not violence and swords and guns and all that kind of shit, but it's a violation. It's inhumane. I mean, I say that, but yeah, people at the working class, knowledge working class, from A to Z, regardless of wage and compensation, they're sick of being told what to do without a question, to comply regardless, comply at risk of punishment. So that's what I hope, that we are beacons of light to show others that it is possible to have change by invitation and self-organization that is true and socially dense and is productive of so much more value than we might have thought, in greater innovation, greater value, and deeper human relationships. So,
yes, I like the title of the Arnold Schwarzenegger autobiography, "Be Useful." I mean, this is all about deploying humanity for good. Let's be useful, and that's, I think, one of the things. I mean, we talk about these topics here week by week almost, but our core work, of course, is not the talking. It's helping organizations to actually do this kind of change. And that's what this thing is about. Here we talk, here we reflect, here we want to share insights or vocabulary and styles and so on. But the ultimate work that we do and that we invite others to do is to actually make this kind of transformation happen. To be useful as consultants, to be useful as advisors to organizations. We also suggest here, of course, for everybody in organizations to be useful as agents of this kind of organizational transformation.
This is
to articulate here, right?
There's a call to action, and this
requires something very uncomfortable, which is dissent, right? Instead of claiming that others resist, which is nothing more less than blaming, right? If you allow yourself to call others resistors, you're already blaming them. I am one of the constructive suggestions I always have is, when I work with clients, I always tell them, I do not believe in resistance to change, but I believe in assholes. not the physical thing, not the medical thing. But people I believe that every organization has some people on board who are assholes, who behave like assholes, right?
And why do they behave like assholes? I mean, everyone's got a different reason for assholishness.
Assholism doesn't require reason,
Well, no, it doesn't. But you may think someone's an asshole, right? But really, they have deep dissent. They have their own story, their own reality that they have created.
That's not my definition of asshole. An asshole is John Cotter wrote this great book about Our Iceberg is Melting. Do you know it, Ryan? I'm not sure if you read it.
No.
Okay, it's a. Here we disagree, by the way, potentially, or we are just disagreeing, right? So I want to clarify what I mean by asshole. To me, an asshole is not somebody who behaves badly within a bad situation. An asshole is somebody who profoundly from the inside wants to be an asshole, and that also exists. I think it's very important to understand that this exists in the John Cotter change story, Our Iceberg is Melting, which was a big bestseller in 2006, I think, 2005, 2006. Wonderful fable, very, very nice, there are a lot of details. And there's one figure in this story, they're all penguins, of course. There's one penguin in this story, and the name that John Cotter gave, and his co-author Holger Rathgeber, they call this type, this archetype, so to speak, no. He's a no. So I use that in my consulting work for a couple of years, and this is very important to understand. There will always be a few no-nos. If you do not have no-nos, the organization would already be perfect and beta and beautiful and everything lovely. But every organization has some. I hope everybody can forgive me. Assholes, I think, is a helpful word to use. It's very helpful to understand that every organization has a few assholes who just by their own spirit want to destroy things, behave badly, but by them just for no reason or for their own whatever inabilities.
For whatever happened to them, there's a reason they're intentionally contrary and intentionally want to.
They're no-nos.
Putting them to work. So I'm sure, again, we of the same age and possibly of the same taste of movies. Okay. Did you see The Dark Knight? The Christian Bale, Heath Ledger movie, the Batman.
The Batman series? Yes. Is Batman an asshole? In a way, he's an asshole, right?
No, I don't think Batman's an asshole. Well, maybe it's in some case. I don't know.
He has an asshole-ish.
The thing is, there is a scene where Alfred, who's Batman's butler, talks about they're talking about the Joker in this, and Batman's struggling with understanding that he's the asshole, and Alfred says some people just want to watch the world burn.
Beautifully put. Yes. We didn't talk about this prior to this show. So this is all improv. Yeah, and we just came up with this nice.
This is always improv. this is my practice, man.
It's very. There are some assholes in the world, and every organization has them. And this is very interesting in the Cotter story. The no-no, he isn't pushed. The no-no penguin in John Cotter's story, Our Iceberg is Nothing. He's not being killed by the others, not thrown into the water. Would that work to kill a penguin? So they do not send him away. He just vanishes from the story. Yeah. Which is very interesting. We sometimes like to say that some people need to be sent to Madagascar.
They're voted off the island. Right?
So we need to make them irrelevant, these assholes. They might leave. That's good. If you transform an organization to beta, some assholes might leave. And again, and by the way, every person can be an asshole, of course, potentially. We all have this in us. The divide between human and asshole runs.
It's about 3 feet.
Yeah, it runs here, not between us. Assholism is not, the divide is not between you and me. It's in us. So I'm not talking about something abstract. I'm talking about people who just cannot get themselves to embrace stuff. That's why I think no is a pretty good name for this kind of attitude or archetype. But to call them assholes because they usually behave in assholey ways. Does it exist? Assholic?
Assholic. They're addicted to their assholishness.
So they behave in ways that are shitty, right? And so to deal with that in constructive ways, and there are very good ways. For example, one of the things that Daniel Masick taught me also is it's a very simple rule. Ignore the unwilling. That is the secret to dealing with assholes. Ignore the unwilling. Ignore them. Don't try to convince them, bring them on your side, co-opt them. Don't try that. Don't use your energy trying to get them on board. Ignore them. Work with the willing, ignore the unwilling. It's a beautiful, very simple tool, I think, for change. This double recommendation or axiom. Work with the willing, ignore the unwilling. That alone in a social process will produce a reconfiguration of the power structures.
Well, and I think also that if someone is behaving as a sphincter, shall we say, that there is a sense that they feel that they can have some kind of influence through that behavior. And
they have influence, yes.
And they have influence because of the system that they feel like they can be an asshole. Because they have
some assholes become president.
more than not, maybe. Yeah. So people are theory Y. There are no theory X people.
Yeah.
So this is also the idea that you carrot and stick right? You throw the carrot out there for someone who's resisting, and that they'll stop resisting, and then they'll go for the carrot just because they want whatever compensation or not. But it's
And an
the
asshole doesn't
real.
resist, right? An asshole doesn't really resist either. It's not a resistor. It's just
The carrot
another
can
game.
never be big enough. The carrot can
Yeah,
never be big enough for the
it's just
asshole.
another game. The asshole just plays another game that can maybe never be. Maybe the game is not rooted in, or usually it will not be rooted in organizational stuff. It will be rooted in personality structures, disorders, or whatever, or personal problems, whatever. And it doesn't really. We shouldn't really care. We should just ignore them. The way to neutralize assholes is by ignoring them. Taking away their influence as much as possible, and maybe remove them even. Yeah, in some instances, it's better to liberate the person, the asshole, and the organization. Sometimes removal is a fair technique, and it needn't be with conflict. It can be very peaceful, the separation.
Well, there's a sense of, if you are a mature adult and have whatever problems you have, that it's important to be transparent about those issues that you have, and engage in adult conversation. And I think that's
Yes.
maybe, and again, maybe we're wandering into another conversation about that. Betas for adults.
Betas, totally for adults. Yes.
It requires people who wish to take responsibility for creating value and do it with each other, for each other at the same time. So it's bringing in. You have to be. Again, have to is a horrible word. It is important for an organization, any organization at any size, any scale, to be self-organizing without some dictatorial person, to show
Yes.
adult behavior and respect and willingness to receive constructive criticism, or to invite dissent, right? So to
Yes.
invite dissent, don't assume resistance. So
Yes. I mean, I think beta organization is about liberating the adultness of people, and not the infantility. Alpha, I think, is very infantility, using and provoking, and so in a way, with a beta organization and the whole theory why human nature assumptions, it implies that you want to create an organization that drives out adult behavior, that produces and reinforces adult behavior, reflective behavior, learning behavior. That's why organizations like Toyota are so great, not because they have the best people, but because they do the best with normal people as an organization. So that's what a beta organization does. It doesn't rely on heroes or the best, but it produces an environment, conditions for the best people to manifest the best of them,
to best of themselves.
Yeah. Yes.
And
By the way, yeah, I think we are a little bit over time, by the way.
We're a little bit over time, and
This
I
is
don't
so
even.
good. Time flies.
Time does fly. For those of you who are here and viewing this in whatever now it is for you, one of our future conversations, whether it's the next or maybe after that, will be with a titan of in the field of self-organization and self-organization in organizations, Mr. Poltolczynski. And hopefully we will have that conversation in a couple of weeks. I have to do my homework on the Topeka example and again the Bromont example in Canada of the self-organized structure of a company. So I am very excited to be in conversation with you, Niels, and
I think we're both looking forward to that, to meet my old friend Paul Toczynski in this session.
Wonderful. All right. Anything that you wish to say about resistance and dissent that you have not said yet?
I would say that let's converse more. It's the quality of conversations we must strive for, and that never never requires blaming or attacking people as children or resistant infants, So I think, it's the essence of good organization is the to drive up the quality of conversation, and this is what we talked about today, right? Do you have something to add? Right.
Well, in the spirit of open space is, and our last open space piece in high performance is, what do we do to allow 8 billion people to have better conversations? How might we do that? And I think a great way for us to start is to do that with where we are in the organizations where we are, and to invite others to engage with us at red red42.com, and I'm trying to think, it's red42, and if you do red FORTY 2.com. So engage with Niels or myself if you want to engage further and make beta happen for your organization through better conversation. So, all right, those of you out in the betaverse, be well, and let's be
Thanks
more
for
beta.
watching this. Yes,
Thanks
see you
for
again
watching.
soon.